I think that.
Yeah. Are these written for them?
No, just in case it doesn't. Turn them off. We're off to a great start.
Is
All right, thank you all for coming.
that it? Aha. I like him on.
Testing. Hello. Hey. All right. Good evening. My name is Ryan. I'm fire chief from North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District. We are streaming this. Hopefully, we do not run into technical difficulties with that. To start this evening off, I'd like to welcome everybody. And we would like to thank our local agency partners that have shown up here this evening. And so with that, I'm going to be going down the list. And if you could please raise a hand, stand, however you feel more comfortable. Starting out with the most important people so far to the fire district, it's going to be my vice chair of the board of directors, Greg McKay. Treasurer Secretary Denise Bremer. All righty, moving on. And then we have board of director Jim Costabucas. Going down the list, Mr. Brown, Washington County Emergency Manager.
Just
County Manager. Sorry. Okay. Robert.
There's something I don't know.
Eric Crump. Chief Fogerson, DEM. This person didn't want to be announced or introduced, but Kara Eastman from Douglas County. Emergency Management. Robert Womack, Town of Truckee Emergency Manager. Lieutenant Ty Connors, Placer County Emergency Manager. Outstanding. Short. Acting General Manager Mike Vandelin for IPID. Sheila Lejean from she's the Director of Parks and Rec for Incline Village IPID. She will be here shortly. Fire Chief Charles Moore, Truckee Meadows Fire. And then on to my staff, Fire Marshal John James. Fuels Division Chief Isaac County. And Assistant Fire Chief Russell Barnum. All right, with that, what I'd like to do is each agency is going to do a quick introduction. We're going to start with North Lake Tahoe Fire, and then I'll be passing the mic on to the other agencies. Put together a quick PowerPoint. We're going to try to stand up, but I have to stay in the camera's view.
Do you?
I want to like at least see the PowerPoint so I can explain it. All right, Alan, the first slide, please. I'll fall off the stage and break my leg. All right, as you know, we had an evacuation drill earlier this year.
Can y'all see through us?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Should we just move?
Earlier this year, we had an evacuation drill. We do this for a number of reasons. I'm going to go over some of the takeaways from North Lake Tahoe Fire. So the first one, obviously with the evacuation drill, we have awesome, great partnerships with all the agencies, county agencies, bi-state agencies that come together for these events and allow us to go through these drills so we can get through this process. Some of the takeaways that we got from it. So obviously these drills provide an opportunity to identify the gaps that are lacking in these evacuation drills. Number one, always, you can talk to any first responder, it's communications. Found areas that we need to improve that communications. Unified command announcements. A wildland fire in the Tahoe Basin is more than likely going to go unified command with us and the federal partners from the Forest Service. And then logistic issues, as with anything else, and the evacuations themselves. One of the other ones is perimeter usage, and you will hear from perimeter later on tonight, but that is an app that 4 counties in Nevada have gone to, and we're trying to get our California partners to go to the same one, so we have the same app around the lake. It's an announcement type app. I'll let them talk about that. And then most importantly, who here has signed up for Code Red? For those of you that have not, it starts there. We cannot get a hold of you. We cannot help you until you sign up for Code Red and enable us to get a hold of you to give you directions in the time of need. So We're asking every citizen, you need to make that emergency plan, assemble a kit, and stay informed. All right? That's our takeaways. I'm going to switch gears for just a second. Everybody's been talking about evacuation. I would like to explain what North Lake Tahoe Fire has done to reduce the wildfire threat. So hopefully we don't have to get to a point of evacuation. Looking at the map behind me, the colors, for the exception, I'm going to go to the camera view for a second, but I'm pointing to the dark green and the two top corners of this, that's Forest Service land. With the exception of those colors, North Lake Tahoe Fire has touched every single piece of land in the lime green, light green, terrible yellow looking color. We've touched each one of those pieces of proper land to reduce that vegetation, not only for forest health, but we are reducing the vegetation to reduce the wildfire threat within our community. We like to call this the halo. In the evenings, we get the downslope winds. If it's coming from the Forest Service land, we can defend it after this field's work. During the day, we have the upslope winds. Those canyons, Second Creek, First Creek, Wood Creek, if it's down in the canyon, we have a chance to go in there and defend your house that's at the top of that ridge and you put that fire out. I don't want to lose sight of that. We will do our best to get that fire out so that we don't ever have to reach the evacuation. So going on to the next slide, you're going to see some pictures of the fuels treatment that we have completed. So let me remind you, we've touched these areas once already. So it's not as thick as it originally was 15, 20 years ago, Isaac. So this is a second, sometimes third reentry, if you will. So the left side that you see, the picture you see now is untreated. The right side is treated. You're going to see the V in the trees, so you know you're in the same area, if you will. The right side is very defendable. Those flame lakes are going to remain small. Next slide, please. Here's one that took a little longer for us to get back into. It's pretty thick. You go to the next slide, you can actually kind of see the next ridge line over. That makes it defendable for us to go in there. Next slide. So just again, some more examples of pre-treated, pre-treatment, and then treated. And then this last slide I'm going to finish up with is on the left. This is impressive to me, and I hope it is to you as well. That's the Angora fire in South Lake Tahoe. The oblong square says Unit 17. That is a treated area. Then the fire blew through. You can see there's some tree limbs left. That tells me, and I know for a fact, the intensity in that area was much lower than the areas around it that's completely black, or what we call moonscaped. On the right, it's hard to tell it. It was a fire from San Bernardino National Forest. The lower half of the triangle is untreated. The upper half of the triangle is treated. So we don't want to lose sight of the work that we have done around this community to reduce the wildland fire threat. So with that, I will pass it on to my partner, Captain Beard. Well, it's not being the partner, it's longer, but Captain will share with us.
Thank you all for coming tonight. I'll talk to you for a few minutes about the Washington County Sheriff's Office efforts for the evacuation on August 16th. First and foremost, I'd like to call your attention to our search and rescue gurus from Washington County, Sergeant Josh Fisher and Alan Chanowski. So thank them both for coming here, and they'll be assisting later on with some of the questions, because this is something that they know a great deal about, more so than myself. But first and foremost, let's start here with our efforts on August 16th.
No pressure.
All right, thank you all. If it doesn't work, I have them printed out here. I can just read off of them if need be. Okay, well, the Washington County Sheriff's Office Search and Rescue response consisted of, there we go, 17 personnel from 3 teams within our organization. Washington County Search and Rescue, Hasty, and the Specialized Vehicle Unit and Incline Village Patrol Deputies. The coordination between other stakeholders included fire, medical, CERT, The NSP, which they're still going to be out of control to me. I can't get the NSP thing going. Washington County Animal Services and dispatch for their respective roles within the scope of the exercise. Search and rescue personnel were utilized to evacuate residences, and deputies were utilized as immediate action teams to handle any incidents that might have occurred as a result of the evacuation, such as uncooperative subjects, potential looters, and unknown, which often occur in these real-life scenarios that we deal with. CERT integrated with search and rescue teams for evacuations, and they conducted traffic control in the areas outside of NSP jurisdiction, which is not to include 431 and 28. NSP conducted traffic control in areas of their jurisdiction, which I previously stated, and Washington County Animal Services were prepared to coordinate animal rescues, which is always a big issue when you're having these types of evacuations. Dispatch contingencies were established, as well as fire and medical response was established. So Washington County Sheriff's Office Search and Rescue evacuated over 80% of the designated evacuation area within 2 hours, or just over 15 residences an hour per person team, which we take great pride in. Those are great numbers as far as what the average would be for such scenarios. 4-person teams typically evacuate 15 residences in 1 hour on average. So from our perspective, as far as the evacuation rate that was done during the 2-hour time frame, we thought that was extremely successful on our end. It was so successful, in fact, that the slides not even want to come out because that was things that we learned from the exercise. The cul-de-sac areas need to be cleaned or cleared of residence vehicles, such as boats and RVs for access to emergency crews. And I'll be retiring shortly, but one of the things I've done and I will do thereafter is to try to speak with some people individually, locally, to try to utilize some parking areas. I love to use like Diamond Peak or something like that to get some of these big RVs and boats up in that area for storage at times during the year. As we all found out that day, getting some of the big rigs into these neighborhoods and cul-de-sacs, very troublesome when there's not much room to actually maneuver and turn these vehicles around. So that's something we're going to have to look at and troubleshoot going forward. Residences requested more training on the perimeter app, which Bailey's going to address here shortly. Residents had questions about cell connectivity and the ability to use apps, etc. if the cell network goes down, which will be addressed. If emergency horns would be used in the event of an emergency, which will also be addressed. And the other thing that we learned was overall, at least 2 are individuals on the ground, that the residents, community members were positive about the experience and happy with the response in the field. I know there were other issues that came up during the course of that, but that's what my folks pretty much relayed to me was out in the field, that most people were receptive and responsive, were impressed with our response as an agency and as a whole exercise for all the agencies. And I believe that will conclude my short portion of this. Kelly? Thank you.
Captain Beer. All right, well, while Alan's getting that set up, I'm Kelly Echevarria. I am the Washington County Emergency Manager. I'm going to first talk about our program, what we do, what our roles and responsibilities are, and I'll talk about an exercise at the end. A little bit throughout, sprinkled throughout, is what you can do. And then I'll touch on perimeter a little bit. Wait, here we go. That's me. So next slide, please. All right, so I apologize if this is too nerdy for you, but I just wanted to review with all of you, for emergency management purposes, the things that we do. So we do mitigation, which Chief Summers spoke about fuels work, and I'll talk about each one of these phases and how it relates to evacuations. But we do preparedness activities, response, obviously, recovery, and we're planning throughout all of it. All right, so mitigation, which I am very nerdy about, but we just hired a mitigation coordinator in our office to work with community partners to push forward mitigation initiatives that we've outlined in our mitigation plan to reduce the impact of disasters in our area. That's the goal. Sabrina, will you raise your hand wherever you are? There she is. So she'll be working with community partners on fire mitigation, all 13 of our hazards, flood, earthquake, we had today, throughout all of those in the items we have identified in our plan to bring those to fruition and lower our risk in this area. So some of them, as you heard, are already happening. So who's responsible for mitigation in our area, in our plan, is fire services. It also has our office listed, but it's really for things that NV Energy is doing. So I want to give them credit for, pole scrubbing and clearing brush away from lines, and the things that they're doing are phenomenal, and we're very blessed that they've taken that on. But also you are responsible for mitigation in your own life, in your own properties, and that's defensible space. Is the bottom picture that you see here. So that came from Living with Fire, which is an organization based out of the University of Nevada, Reno. And they work with community partners and HOAs on bringing that information to you. This information is available on their website. If you have any trouble accessing that, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help in any way. But defensible space starts at home. So making sure that flammable vegetation is not right up against your house, or junk, paint cans, cars, tree limbs, that sort of thing, and making sure that you're adhering to the spacing requirements. There are some pretty cool videos out there on what happens to a house that doesn't have defensible space versus a house that does. And it's similar to the pictures that Chief Summers showed you about a treated forest area versus a non-treated forest area. Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District has a great prevention team, and one of their staff members used a fantastic metaphor that I've just been stealing. Her name's Brittany, and she said, you can do all of the things when you're driving, right? You have insurance on your car, you are a defensive driver, you've taken the classes, and an accident can still happen. But you still want to take all of those measures to ensure that you're safe while driving a car. That's defensible space. So you're doing all of the things to ensure that your home is safe against disaster. Disasters still happen. That's why they're disasters. But we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can, you for your home and us in the community, to make sure that we're reducing our risk for the disaster to impact us. All right, so preparedness, and Chief Summers touched on this a little bit earlier. There's personal preparedness, so having a kit, making a plan, staying informed. Who here, raise your hand, has a personal preparedness plan? So what are you going to do? Okay, for those of you who did not raise your hand, there are plans in the back. We printed them out. It starts with you, because you are the first person to be impacted by something in your area, right? So if you don't have a plan, then an emergency event is going to be a lot tougher on you than if you know where you're going, or who you're calling, or where your important documents are, or you have a go bag, a kit to grab on your way out of the house. I've been evacuated myself. It's very scary. It's a short time frame, and there may or may not be power. So keeping that go bag and those important documents in an easily accessible area or a secondary location, or your car, is really important. But also part of that plan is knowing, are you going to be able to get out of the house? Do I have a garage door that has a second backup battery? If not, how can I get one? Or am I leaving my car behind and riding with my neighbor? I know some people have like heavy wooden garage doors, and when the power's out, it's really hard to lift them. So knowing what obstacles are inside your home are going to help you make your plan. Sherry from Red Cross is giving me a lot of north-south head nodding. So the Red Cross is also a really great resource for building your plan. So knowing what resources are available in your community to support having a kit, making a plan, and staying informed. The staying informed piece, I'm going to talk about kind of throughout this presentation, but really, it's knowing where to get information. So from verified sources, we have the public information officers in our region created a phenomenal website called emergencywashoe.com, and it's where we post all of our emergency information. Perimeter map lives on that website also, so if you ever forget what the link is for the map, you can go to emergencywashoe.com. Remember, in an emergency and Washoe County, that's the name of the website. So that's one really good place to get information. Okay, so another type of preparedness that we do is outreach. We, unfortunately, in the pandemic, had to scale back our outreach because we weren't allowed to see each other face to face, but we're really ramping that back up, our preparedness activities. So we've been able to do a couple of tabling events, the Incline Village, music, the preparedness fair that we did in concert with our exercise was another great opportunity. And then we're constantly working with North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District and the Sheriff's Office to make sure that we're passing out the same information to everyone. It's coordinated messaging. We're supporting as many events as we can. If emergency management can't be there, maybe Incline, public safety can be there. So we have community-wide initiatives. So Red Cross has their Home Fire campaign that really focuses on plans and smoke alarms, and Sherry can tell you way more about it with a lot more enthusiasm, but that's a really great program that's available to us. And then there's curbside chipping that happens. North Lake Tahoe has a chipper, and they'll come to your house and help you with that defensible space using that chipper. And then training, exercises, and education. So really, you all can educate yourselves. FEMA training is free, but so is ready.gov and Red Cross's website and our website on all different aspects of preparedness. But our staff and first responder staff throughout the region is constantly training, exercising, and educating ourselves as well so that we can perform at that top level in an emergency response. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about evacuation responses and who in Nevada is responsible for what. So in a fire, fire is going to be on scene first, North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District, and they'll either eliminate the threat, as Chief Summers was alluding to earlier, being able to, put that wet stuff on the hot stuff, get the fire out before it comes to you, or order evacuations based on known variables. So how fast is this threat advancing towards a community? What is the weather? Is it pushing it forward? What is the community makeup? What time of year is it? Is it 4th of July? Is it the middle of winter? What's going on? Those are all variables that play into those decisions to evacuate an area and how big that area is. So that comes from fire. Law enforcement does door-to-door notifications, as Captain Beard was speaking about earlier, and traffic management. And then emergency management is responsible for alerts and warnings and supporting field operations with resources and information, and then providing mass care through the Emergency Shelter Council. So I had hoped that Melissa Lonnie from our radio shop would be here today. She is under the weather. So I'll talk a little bit about this. She gave me the rundown, and if she can explain it to me, she can explain it to all of you. So hopefully when she's back up, we'll have a longer conversation with her if you'd like, but I'll do my best to translate that information. So we have an alerting system that we use, Code Red, as was mentioned earlier. If you have not signed up, please do that. We send alerts out as many ways as we can. One, we recognize that people communicate in different ways. My primary method of communication might be text, while Bailey might be email. Doesn't answer phone calls, only email. That's not the case for her. I'm just using her as an example. But so we send it out as many ways as possible. It's also a way of ensuring that we're getting through to you we're getting you that emergency information that you need. So we do this through the emergency alert system. That's that womp womp that comes through on radio, TV, that you're kind of like, what's happening? What is interrupting what I'm listening to? That's that. So the wireless emergency alert, that's going to come through on your cell phone as a voice call and a text message. We also do reverse dial to landlines. And then we do TTD for our deaf and hard of hearing community members, social media, and email. All of this can be sent out on a local system. I want to talk a little bit about this because I had a really great conversation with the neighborhood of Arrow Creek, where they asked me, if my phone is on silent, am I going to receive an alert? And we said, gosh, let's find out more about this. So we did. We talked to Code Red, and they said, if you're sending out a local alert, no, it won't overwrite. We tested it out ourselves because there's different settings, right? Like focus or sleep or just silence. So it will come through on focus if you're just sending a local alert. Okay, hold on. Switch it up. All right, cool. So that's sort of good, right? But the good news is we send it out through iPause, which is through FEMA. It's a different way, and that way overrides those features. And we always use that in our emergency alerting in this area. So it's good to know the differences. I wanted to explain that to you in case you also had that question. But in the same way that the presidential alert came out a few weeks ago, and even if you had your phone on silent, it still went off, that's what's going to happen when we send alerts. Okay? So I wanted to talk also a little bit about infrastructure. So we've been working with other counties around the lake. Met with our friends from Placer today, but we've been having a lot of conversations over the past couple of months, as well as Douglas and Carson and even with the state, about the infrastructure specifically around the lake, but really throughout our county, but also, again, specifically at the lake. So what does that look like? So we have cell towers. They're mapped out. We can drill down to who owns them, where are they? There's radio towers. There's the Nevada Shared Radio System. And then we're working towards a goal of redundancy on those towers in 2020. So what that means is, and this is the tricky part that I wish Melissa was here for, but I'm gonna do my best. So on a radio tower, there are microwave dishes. If there are two, it's considered redundant communications in case one goes down. But what we're working towards, in addition to just having those two, is with NDOT putting in fiber optic cable to each of those locations. So that it's truly redundant in case one of those three fails, there are two backups. And that's the extent of my subject matter expertise on radio tower. A lot of times it's frustrating for emergency managers. We bring the subject matter experts to the table, but we are not, in this case, the radio subject matter expert. So sorry about that. I did my best. If you have questions about that, let me know and I'll connect you with them. Okay, so we also are engaged in response. This year alone, we've had 3 activations. 1, January storms. 2, March storms. 3, Burning Man. Believe it or not, we were activated for that as well. And then we had an additional response of a mercury spill at the Spanish Springs Library. Our partners, Truckee Meadows Fire, Washoe County Sheriff's Office, or Lake Tahoe Fire, are responding to incidents every day. It's just part of their everyday. But for us in emergency management, our big activations have been these 3 and then additional response to the mercury spill. In between all of them, we're training and exercising and planning and testing processes and working with partners and building relationships. So currently we have the evacuation, mass care, and shelter annex. It does need updating, which we all know. We are updating parts of it at a time because it's a beast. It's really like multiple plans put together. So in the future, I've done a lot of talking with emergency managers from around the state, from around the country, asking best practices. What does yours look like? What do you think about this? We want to put more detail in these annexes. They're really annexes. It's not a standalone plan. And so what I think is going to happen is we're going to break them apart. So, but in a good way. It's not a true breakup. But we're going to separate evacuations. And the idea behind that is that is for our fire and law partners. They're the ones in the field doing the evacuation in conjunction with our roads and infrastructure partners as well. But that's really the focus, is getting the people out of an area. And then sheltering and mass care is a separate beast altogether. And so we want to focus on those when we're focusing on this. And we want to put as much detail and study and information as we need for decision making into those plans. But like I said, for evacuation, it's really fire, law, infrastructure that needs that detailed information. It shouldn't also be flipping through what shelter operations are doing in order to try to make decisions. So also for sheltering, it's good for them to know we all plan as a whole community together so that we're tied into these plans and we're able to train to them and support one another. But they really, again, need to focus on that mass care and sheltering. And so we'll be breaking those apart. Like enhanced focus, details, and partner inclusion in each of those annexes. All right, so now to the exercise. So this was a big one. We do it every couple of years up here. The last one was in 2018, and again, a little pandemic got in the way, so it's delayed it a bit, but we were finally able to pull it off. The capabilities that we tested, and again, sorry if this is too nerdy for you, but I wanted to provide as much information as I could so that you could take away what you needed. So we tested communication. I will say, it is, going into every exercise, communication is going to be number one thing that needs improvement. Also in this exercise, in a very exciting way, it was noted as a positive thing that we're very good at certain aspects of communication. So we also test fire suppression and management, situation assessment, public information and warning, transportation, coordination, and planning. So those are the capabilities that we tested. We partnered with other agencies to review and assess how we did and made a lot of detailed notes on each of those partners from around the state, and it was really successful. So overall, there were 4 marks that you could get in each one of those capabilities. So performed without challenges, performed with some challenges, performed with major challenges, and then unable to perform. And our partners are very truthful in their evaluation of us because they know we can't get better if they're not. So overall, we did pretty good. We performed with challenges, 26 of the capabilities, and the things within those capabilities broken down a little bit further. And then 9 performed with some challenges, which was good because it gave us some areas that we can improve upon. Return needs. So access and functional needs support at shelters. Now this was a weird kind of judgment thing to go off of because we didn't really set up a shelter. We set up a preparedness fair and we tested our ability to check people into a shelter. So really the area to improve there was provide more information and preparedness fairs to people with access and functional. So we will do that. We will improve that process of our preparedness program in the future, but also make sure we're tying in with Red Cross on their shelter training. A really good point that was made from Nevada DEM was use people who have access and functional needs to test your access and functional needs, which you would think, duh, but we didn't do that. So we will in the future to make sure that we're providing the services that they need to be successful in that environment. So WebEOC staff training, that's right up there with communication. That WebEOC is the virtual version of an EOC or an Emergency Operations Center. It's how we communicate. It's our unit of record. amongst responders. And so there are so many responders that this is always an issue. And we do annual training on WebEOC. We've trained our staff. Francisco, raise your hand. Francisco is responsible for WebEOC trainings now. So we can provide that more frequently to our partners to provide for better communication during response. Perimeter implementation with mapping software specifically. So of course, Bailey will speak more to this, but one of the things that we learned was perimeter it was a different method than the sheriff's office was using to mark where they were evacuating. And so we wanted to align those better, and we've already done this. So Noah from Perimeter was able to work with the sheriff's office to overlay our map with their map and ensure that it matches. But that is something that came out of this exercise and was solved in like a week, if that. I'm sure Noah did it that afternoon. But yeah, so that was one. IT support in the alternate EOC. So we stood up our emergency operations center at Parasol. We wanted to test doing that. And we did not bring our tech services with us to do that. And we noticed it, the exercise, because technology can be hard. Right? Yeah. So we will bring them next time. Bring a buddy. We're bringing IT. We also wanted to make sure that the liaison to incident command is identified. A lot of times it falls on the public information officer, and we did use Tia in that capacity from North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District, and she was amazing. But it was kind of like an organic thing that happened. We weren't like, hey Tia, you're going to be the liaison to the EOC and incident command, right? Yeah, so that's an area for improvement for us in emergency management. We still were able to communicate with incident command, but that was a challenge. Spanish language inclusion, I think, was just across the board in all of our operations. Alerts come through in Spanish if you have your phone settings set to Spanish, but really in our messaging, we want to be as inclusive as possible. So that was on there. EOC meeting time posting for staff. So a lot of this is really internal stuff for us. But there's a lot of meetings that happen in an emergency operations center. Believe it or not, government loves meetings. And typically we'll post those. We didn't, excuse me, in this scenario. So that's something we want to make sure that we're doing, posting it on the wall. We now have a board in WebEOC where those are posted as well. And then alternate EOC security. So another buddy we didn't bring with us is security at Parasol. And we had some people trying to get in and video and not stay in designated areas. And it was just weird and could have potentially been unsafe for the staff in the Emergency Operations Center. So we will be sure to bring tech services and security next time we do an exercise. But if we have to set up an alternate EOC, those individuals are number 1 and 2 on our phone call after coordinating with first responders. And then training needed in shelter management, which I spoke a little bit about earlier. And then the MAEA, which is public health. So public health, as part of this exercise, is working with the hospital and incline, and that's really their, Sabrina, correct me if I'm wrong, mass mutual aid. Thank you. We also have a lot of acronyms in emergency management, so sometimes we have to phone a friend. Thank you. So those are the areas to improve that came out of our exercise. Out of all those capabilities, these were the biggest. And that's it for me. I will turn it over to Bailey. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bailey Farron, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Perimeter. It's been mentioned already, but for the next few minutes, I'll tell you a little bit about what the platform is, how it works, and of course, how you can get access to it. But the super quick background on me and the company is this is something that we started 5 years ago after experiencing some really challenging evacuations in my home county of Sonoma. There were challenges in terms of getting information to residents, but there were also a lot of challenges faced by the public safety agencies in terms of sharing information between them. whether that's fire, law, emergency management, other groups who show up, public works, transportation, etc. All of them expressed to us that they needed a better system for sharing real-time information that's map-based with each other and with residents. So on to the next slide, please. Great, so what is Perimeter? It is a real-time public safety information system. Basically, it's a map that you can access through a link that does not require any sign up. It does not require any download. Next slide. Thank you. So what you see on Perimeter, you will see things like evacuation areas. You could potentially see road closures, hazards, shelters, resources, etc. We want this to be a link that you can go to answer questions about what's going on and what am I supposed to do about it. Next slide, please. So the way that it works is first responders download an app. Once again, you residents do not need to download an app. So first responders will, and using the platform, they can add points, routes, polygons on the fly or pre-planning, and all of those that they can then publish to get them into your hands in just a couple of seconds. Next slide, please. So once they've added that data, they can review it, they can share it between the agencies, and then they can publish it in real time using their Perimeter app, and it'll go straight to the web app that you'll be able to access through a link. Next slide. Awesome. So once the first responders have inputted the data, of course, we want to make sure that it's accurate, that it's relevant, that it's timely. And so Kelly and her team will be reviewing that information and they'll be publishing it to the public map. Not all of the information, of course, will be public because lots of the data will be relevant primarily to the first responders. But anything that answers questions about which areas might be under evacuation, where the roads might be closed, etc., that will all get published. Next slide. Awesome. And this is how you actually access the Perimeter platform. So once again, there's no sign up, there's no download. All you have to do is go to perimetermap.com/washoe. And as Kelly mentioned, if you don't remember the link, you can still go to Emergency Washoe to find the information. And once you click that link, it'll ask you if you'd like to enable your location. You don't have to do this, but if you do, it will take you to your precise location. And then once you select a piece of data, you can basically just read more information about whether it's an evacuation area, a zone, there will be more descriptions in there. It won't be done in the presentations. Awesome. And then we have designed the platform to work really well in low connectivity environments. So this isn't something if you have zero connectivity and no Wi-Fi, it's not something that you'll be able to get real-time information from. However, we spent years developing the platform primarily for those low connectivity environments because we understand that almost every single disaster turns into one eventually. And so we have, thought long and hard and worked on that for years to make sure that it works. However, in your go bag, I would suggest in case power loss does happen, etc., that you do have a spare battery that doesn't require your car or anything like that, just so that you can continue to get that live information. Now, I mentioned that there isn't an opt-in or a sign-up, but one of the easiest ways to get this link during the incident is through Code Red. So we are not an alert and warning system. So Code Red will be used at times to send out this link. It'll also come out on social media. Again, it will be on the Washoe County website. And so you won't have to opt into this, but opting into Code Red is one of the easiest ways that you can get this link as soon as it comes out from emergency management. Anything you'd like me to add?
Yeah, I just want to add that obviously you can't get a link for a phone call, but we will send it out via the other ways. So in the phone call, in the voice that comes through, we will still be describing the area that's being evacuated, so that if someone doesn't, communicate via text, or if it is a reverse dial phone call to a landline, and those people are still getting the information in a digestible way. So just, hey, go to the link, and if not, good luck. We want to do that as much as we can. I just have one go back. You don't have to. Okay. One go back is in the presidential alert. We learned something a little concerning about alerts. which was some people live in unsafe situations. So like think, if you will, like domestic violence type situations, and they have secret phones for safety purposes. So one of the things that we were seeing on social media ahead of the presidential alert was letting these individuals know if you have a secret phone to turn it off because of that override on the silence that I talked about earlier. How if we send the alerts through FEMA, then it's going to override your silent features and might give away that this person has a secret phone for safety. This is a weird concept for a lot of people, which I'm grateful for because it means you're not in an unsafe situation. But if you know someone who is, I think it's an opportunity to have that conversation and talk just through them on the best way for them to keep that phone in a safe way. Because I don't want us trying to keep them safe from an emergency to cause a secondary emergency in their home life where they're now unsafe with that. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. Thank you for letting me go back. But that being said, I'll hand it over to Tia.
Good evening, everyone. So what we're going to do now is we asked everyone ahead of time to submit their questions ahead of time so we can produce efficiently. We've got a lot of questions, so we're going to go through them now real quick. And so we're just going to start. So I just want to thank everyone for doing that. If we have time, when we're done, we'll take questions this evening, but we'll see how that goes, okay? So the first question, all notices appear to be delivered by email, internet, and or mobile phone call text. Landline phone service is basically unavailable and the substitutes are VoIP, which is also internet dependent. When all of this is down, as it likely will be, and given the difficulty in evacuating this area, how will we receive timely, advanced, real-time info in order to proactively respond?
I'll take that question. So emergency management can only operate within the bounds of technology that we're given, right? So I can't make technology that doesn't already exist. Again, that's not my bailiwick, maybe Bailey, although it takes a long time, 5 years. So what I'll say is, I already went over kind of the options for receiving information. Your radio is one of them. If you don't have radio service, cell service is another one. Landlines do still exist. They do. It's not just internet. So, invest in that landline if you live in a spot that doesn't get good cell service or radio service. There are multiple options. Connecting to internet is another one via email or social media. So those are our options that we have. And I would suggest really looking into where you live and your specific connectivity, and then choosing the options that work best for you.
Thank you, Kelly. Next question. Given the challenge of evacuating this area, it seems likely that proactive early movement will be preferable. Is this the planned approach? If not, why?
Yes. So we plan to evacuate in phases. So starting with a smaller area first. As I mentioned earlier, the size of the area being evacuated is going to be dependent on a lot of variables. So the size of the threat, how quickly it's moving towards a neighborhood, etc. But yeah, so the plan is to evacuate in phases to avoid some of those traffic concerns that we see associated with evacuations. Some of those are unavoidable. Evacuations are not going to be, Indy 500 out of the area. It's not going to be super fast. But we are going to try to do it as efficiently and effectively and as safely as we can.
And I think one thing we need to remember, the likelihood of us evacuating all of Incline is very, very low. If you look at our topography, our fuels, our weather, and how a fire evolves, they start as a V, the bottom is where the origin of the fire, more than likely in a V, and they'll be up and on the outskirts or above the residence. So the entire village being evacuated, it could still happen, but it's very, very low. The entire village would be evacuated. I want to elaborate on that or make sure we emphasize that.
Yeah, I think also good point, Chief. The shape of the community also probably plays a big role in that, it's kind of shaped, like that. So something that's happening up in the north isn't necessarily impacting kind of the east or south.
Okay, thank you. Next question, why do published evacuation plans not consider the huge volume of visitors, tourists, both to incline and to nearby recreation sites, example, Sand Harbor? On a high volume summer day, all it takes is a few thunderclouds from a sprinkler to create past Sand Harbor exodus, fogging roads through Incline Village. When will these planning gaps be remedied to create realistic plans?
So this is part of that focus that I spoke about earlier. I'm speaking with the CAB, Diane Becker regularly. She's sending me information and numbers, but also I've been speaking with my community partners on the best way to go about this. And what Truckee has set a phenomenal example, and we're going to use those best practices here, one of which is working with IVKIDS to determine, based on water usage, how many people are actually here and what those peak times are, and look at that over time as well, not just this year or last year, but what does that look like over time. We're also working with NDOT to determine how many cars are in our area at any given time. Because I've heard of a lot of those concerns from all of you, and it's something that we want to take into account in the most accurate way possible. So if we can pull those partners with that specific information into the table and cross-reference our data. So, water is saying that we have this many people, but NDOT is saying we have this many cars, and what does that look like? And how does that tie into our decision-making, and how large of an area to evacuate, and how many resources to put on the road to make sure that we're evacuating as swiftly and safely as possible.
And obviously, it's a really fluid situation based on the day and time of such an incident. You can go from dozens to several hundreds to several thousand people at the beaches or Sand Harbor. And it's going to depend upon the day and time of such things. So hopefully we'll have the information available where you have a very accurate assessment of the number of vehicles and individuals involved, and then we'll adjust accordingly as the situation is always going to be a fluid one based on those numbers. And again, we'll make sure that there's no one coming in, and we'll have a large perimeter to ensure that all of our traffic is going out of the area or to a designated spot.
I think if I could also talk about a couple other, really great things that are happening in regards to this is one, the Interhospital Coordinating Council that meets, they talk about events that are happening in our area and your area, this area up here, so that all of our community partners, that meeting is robust. All of our community partners are at that meeting. And we all know what events are going on that month. And we can account for that in our decision making. Another thing that we're doing is creating a regional events group where we can review emergency plans for events and work together to make sure that we're supporting those events in the best way that we can, in a coordinated fashion, and that we're leaning forward and ready to respond to the event, what their anticipated numbers are, how they plan to get people in and out. So I know, there are events up here that bring a lot of people in, and we want to make sure that we're planning for those and we're supporting them, we're aware of them, we're ready to lean forward and take action if needed.
Can we?
I was asking, you talked about NDOT coordination. And one of the things you saw in the Calder fire, when they evacuated South Lake Tahoe, they started sending cars out to North Lake Tahoe. And 28 was under construction lake bridges. And NDOT had no idea of the evacuation. And they were quick to respond once the community members called and alerted. But it looked like there was a gap there. NDOT didn't know what was going on.
Sure. So I can speak to that. Certainly. So NDOT is working to bring the fiber optic cable that I mentioned for the redundancy in communications up to the lake. And so what that means up here is that we'll have more cameras tied into NDOT's system. So they'll have more situational awareness on any situation like that might happen. I'm aware of what we're talking about. We worked very hard to make sure that we were able to catch up to that and to put protections in place to make sure that people were not coming to incline. And I think we were able to do that fairly quickly. But yes, improvements have been identified and they're in the process of coming. I just wanted, before you continue, Tia, I think we're holding any other questions too, if we have time for the end, right?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Next question, because we might answer your question, so we'll try to go through these as quickly as we can. It's 6:30, so we're trying to be mindful of everyone's time. It is apparently industry standard in evac planning to create street-by-street plans, and many locals have requested that this be done and shared. This is a huge gap. When will this occur?
So as I've mentioned a couple of times, we're constantly talking with our partners around the state, with the state, across the country, with neighboring states on best practices. This is not a best practice that we have, identified, and so it's not something that we're pursuing. What we are looking at is, any choke points, any areas that might interrupt an evacuation, a safe and timely evacuation. What are those, so that our partners in the field, law enforcement, can put things and resources in place to prevent that?
Thank you, Kelly. Many residents are elderly and others likely have pre-existing conditions, making significant smoke exposure a higher risk. How will air quality be managed in evac centers if folks are not given adequate warning to allow evacuation out of area?
So part of that personal preparedness plan is having a kit. And if you know that you or a neighbor have issues with air quality, then putting a mask in your go kit to prevent those issues is part of your personal preparedness plan. Fires happen, air quality goes down. Even fires not in our area, as we've seen, we get smoke from California, but it's up to us individually. And if you're not able to identify, what type of mask that might be, then I suggest that you reach out to your medical provider and have that conversation with them.
Thank you, Kelly. Shelter and resistant buildings locally will not protect from smoke unless there is an air handling capability to reduce PM 2.5 at central levels. What is the plan?
So I'll take this one on, but I'm going to be asking for help from our fire marshal. This is obviously something that's going to be looked at through the Wildland Urban Interface Building Code. And I'd like to turn it over to John real quick. There's a microphone, I think, over there to address this.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, so the answer to that is during a wildfire, the smoke conditions are horrible. The visibility will be horrible, and there aren't any structures that are identified as safe places to go that would have a cannabis system that would provide a great area to be at. In the future, maybe builders start to do that, but currently that's not the case. But as Chief Summers alluded to, every building permit, every short-term rental permit be issued, getting defensible space will get called. So as we progress, the home become harder to survive a wildfire. That's a different kind of strike. It's not a strike to get.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Incline Village only has 3 two-lane highways to evacuate the village, too few for a swift evacuation. How will Washington County control access to these routes?
I'll fill this question. I had Sergeant Fisher drive all the way up here from the valley, so I'm going to put him on the spot to answer that one. If you want to take the mic or just yell.
Well, actually,
Okay, right there. You're up later, Ellen.
All right, so like we discussed already, fires are very fluid, and the closures or movement of traffic is always dependent upon where the fires are starting and going. Fire, obviously, signs where we're evacuating, and based on that information and where the fire is, we determine where is the best point to leave the valley. John, do you have anything else to add to that?
Sorry to caution about it. So one of the things you got to look at, you are in a small valley. You do have only small ingress and regress areas. One of the biggest things we would look at, depending on the size and scope of the event that was happening, scooter would get shut down. we would shut, we would shut the summit down or somewhere close to that, somewhere where we have enough room and we can turn vehicles around and get them out. So we would do that. California, the border, they're going to be evacuating just as much as we are. That may be a possibility to go that direction. So we would have to look at that size and scope of that event. And we may be talking to Alaska and saying, hey, you're going to have the traffic coming to you. And then it just depends. We don't know until the evacuation or the event happens. A lot of times what is I guess maybe the hard problem for the residents, you guys, and especially for us. Some of these events happen so fast that response times are extended, right? We only have so many resources in the area. So we have to call those resources in from other areas. And one of those things for us, and it's key, because the highways are ours, we would be pulling resources from Reno to come up from Reno to take care of those highways. I would be pulling guys from Carson, Tahoe, or Carson, Minden, Gardnerville area, bringing them up to deal with 28. And then on the California side, it just depends on how many people we can get in here at what time to work the different areas. So in a nutshell, it's a hard question to answer, but the truth is it takes time and we will shut things down. And yes, you can get an overflow for a period of time until we can get units in place to take care.
What does it mean shut things down?
So what he's talking about is just making one-way traffic on certain roadways. The big thing here, again, while we're getting set up on these things is being prepared, right? Knowing that there's a fire in a certain area, having that knowledge with code red of exactly what's going on, perimeter app, listening to these announcements that are coming out, leaving as early as possible is a good idea, not waiting till the last minute, but being prepared.
And I believe I speak for all agencies represented here today that in the event of such a catastrophe, that every resource available that each respective agency has will be called upon and will be responding. So that we'll have plenty of people coming out to handle any issue that comes up. We'll have all hands on deck.
I'll just tag on to that. Historically, we haven't really done pre-evacuation areas. And something Chief Moore and I used to talk about a lot was areas where we want to say, be ready to evacuate. You're near an evacuation area. How can we improve upon that? Perimeter has really given us the ability to do that. So we're also able to draw those areas on the map. And so you'll know if you're in a pre-evacuation area, and if you should be getting ready to go or prepared to leave at any moment. But I'll also say, if you're uncomfortable, if you know there's a threat nearby and people are being evacuated, you're not necessarily in that evacuation area, or if you know it's going to take you a little bit longer for whatever reason, you can leave at any time. You don't have to wait for us to tell you to leave. If you have to go to an open shelter, you don't have to be in that evacuation area. If you're close, we'll still take care of you. But I want to just really focus on, you can leave early if you are uncomfortable or if you need a little bit more time.
Thank you, Kelly. Just a real quick note, when we ask someone else to answer a question other than you four, can we have you folks please come up and stand near this microphone, because the folks online are having a hard time hearing you. So we just discovered that. So thank you. Are there designated places for evacuation to gather prior to leaving?
So if we set up an evacuation point, we will communicate that to the public. We prefer that residents follow the directions given. Don't go see how close you can get to look at the fire or take pictures or any of that. Please do what is being asked. So if we're asking you to evacuate and we're saying the evacuation point is at this location, please, if you go there, if you would like to find out more information, you're also able to go elsewhere outside of the evacuation area. But we are in the midst of a huge study on, what facilities are appropriate for evacuation points, shelters, bulk distribution of goods, mass migration sites, all of those being extensively mapped out. So yes, we know locations on the responder side. We work with the Red Cross that also has shelter site surveys completed. And so we will communicate those to you in an event. I don't want to say, go to point A for every incident, and then point A is in an unsafe area, and everybody still has in their brain, go to point A, because now I'm putting you in danger. So that's why I'm kind of being vague about this question in that I'll tell you in an incident where to go. It'll be on the perimeter map as well. The Emergency Shelter Council, it used to be, I like to tell people how arduous the process used to be. We had pagers, and then we all called in on a conference line, had a conversation about where should we have this shelter, and then sent out the alert. So imagine how much time that takes. But now we're all on a group chat, if you will, and we can make those decisions very quickly and put that information into perimeter, into the alert that goes out so people know where to go.
Thank you, Kelly. How will people be notified to evacuate? So we're going to get some redundancy here.
I think I've covered that.
Yeah. I'm just reading them all because we did say we would read everyone's questions. So we'll skip them if we've already answered them, okay? Or we'll just say we've already answered them. Are the evacuation routes already drawn out?
In that we have maps, yes. But again, we don't have I'll give you the example of Reno if I can, because there's more points of ingress and egress. So for my evacuation that I was a part of, it was the Pine Haven fire. And there wasn't, go out Skyline Boulevard. It was get out in the safest way that you can. Law enforcement was there to direct us in the path that we needed to go. Again, because we don't know where the threat will be coming from every single time. There are so many variables that I don't want to say, head towards Kings Beach. That is the one proven evacuation route in your area, because if the threat is coming from that direction, I don't want to send you there. So again, that information will be included in the alerts that we sent out. It'll be on perimeter map as well.
Okay, thank you.
Tia, really quick, if I could, one thing to keep in mind, I'll bring it back here locally. We have 3 ways out of town. That's 2 more than some of the other communities around the lake. So we need to make sure we know that. It's 3 ways out, and we'll be utilizing any and all of them in the time of an incident.
I will also say there is no national standard for the number of routes of ingress and egress. Believe me, I have annoyingly asked everyone, are you sure? Have you asked the person above you? There is no standard because of all those variables that we've talked about, but we do push for as many as we can for your safety. But again, that I can only control what I can control, and I am not in charge of roads. So yes, there are 3 routes in and out, but I just want you to know that we are asking those questions at every level.
Thank you. Next question, how will people be notified which route to take? For example, if the southerly route is blocked or inaccessible some way, then people need to go towards Mount Rose.
So again, roadblocks will be on the perimeter map. And if there is a road that absolutely cannot be used, we'll push that information out.
How will people without cars, service people, and others be evacuated?
So knowing ahead of time that you don't have a car is part of your personal preparedness plan. If you're teaming up with your neighbor to get a ride out of your neighborhood, then that's part of your plan. That's why it's important to know your plan and build that out and work to overcome the challenges that you have specifically. If you're trapped in an incident, or if you can't get out, then that's a call to 911, is I cannot get out. I am trapped. I need help. And then our first responders will receive that information and work together to help you.
Thank you, Kelly.
No, that's perfect. Additionally, on this, for those of you with cars, it's your personal responsibility to make sure the tank is full of gas. If we've got predicted fire weather coming towards us, you want to make sure your car is full of gas. We are not going to be here to tell you to fill your car up before you evacuate, please.
Yes, don't play how low can you go. That is a game I used to play for funsies, and it was right below that E. And unfortunately, you know, and it's not just in fires, but I lived in an area where we lost power to the entire region in a two-hour circumference. And so people were only making it home if they had gas in the tank already. So a tough lesson learned, had nothing to do with fire, just power outage. And then those gas pumps weren't working. So don't play that.
And just lastly, just as I said, make sure you utilize 911 if the situation calls for it. But again, with the preparedness plan, just ensure that you have that plan with your neighbors. You know each other well, so when a situation like that comes up, they'll know exactly that the individual in this home needs a ride. So those things are already decided ahead of time, just to have that safety plan developed with your neighbors.
Especially for kids.
Especially for kids.
Yes.
Red Cross does. And
All right, great. Next question. Will off-site property owners such as myself be notified as well as my tenants about evacuation?
so if you sign up in code red, you're able to sign up for a specific location. The system knows that your number is tied to that location. So even if you're not here, you will still get that notification. Again, this has happened to me literally every time I leave the country, which I may not be allowed to do anymore, because something happens and I get a notification that there's a threat to my neighborhood in another country. So I know that it works. I've tested it out myself. But you have to sign up in code red.
All right, just another reminder. So those flyers are in the back. If you aren't signed up, you can please grab one and sign up. Will there be a central contact number to check on family or friends if separated during the evacuation?
So Red Cross can help with family reunification in large scale incidents. We also have a family reunification and family assistance center plan for mass casualty incidents. So it's part of our coroner's plan. So if there is a large enough incident where you're not able to reconnect with family members after a certain amount of time, you know, that plan would be activated, but also the Red Cross helps with that. Sherry, do you want to talk about that at all? Or?
Hi, Bear Lewis, also known as Sherry from Red Cross. I'm the Northern Nevada Disaster Program Manager. Thank you for letting me touch on this. So yeah, you guys can always call 1-800-RED Cross. This applies to events that are in our area or outside of our area. So we had several people calling into 1-800-RED Cross trying to reconnect with those in Hawaii. The other thing that I highly recommend for preparedness is have an outside contact phone number outside the area that all of your family members can memorize, so that wherever they are, they can call that outside contact, whether it be a family member or a friend outside the area, and notify one another of each other's well-being. Because oftentimes people lose their cell phones, batteries go dead, things happen. So if you can just all memorize one phone number, it can really bring you all together a lot faster and sooner during an incident.
Thank you. If the power is out, how will communications be handled?
Yeah, so again, I think I answered this already, but I'll touch on it again. Landlines with corded phones don't require power, but also radios are still an option for you. Cell phones still work when the power is out. I will say, you know, we got a lot of questions after Lahaina because initially the information coming out was that the cell towers did not have power. That was not the case. The cell towers did have power. It was the fiber optic cables that had burned that were not allowing the information to go through to the tower to send out. But there were still other ways, as I've described tonight, I think pretty much at length. So.
Thank you. Basin cell towers are limited and often get overwhelmed when traffic or non-emergency days. Will citizens be able to access the perimeter website?
Yes, so like I mentioned, the Perimeter web app, the link that you go to, has been designed for low connectivity environments, but something you can do to continue to have access, even if you lose connectivity, is once you go to the link, don't refresh the app or don't refresh the web app, because all of the information, as soon as it is able to come through, will automatically come through. So you do not have to refresh. It will automatically populate and it will automatically save to your device. However, if you try to refresh, what will happen is the server will try to refresh the entire map, all of the data, and so it might take a while to load it again. So once you have it up, just leave it and it'll get updates to you as soon as they come through.
I'll also say, if a project comes through to add cell towers to your area, I've heard a lot of concerns about cell towers. That's a good project to support because we've identified a gap, and we're trying to put up more towers to maintain that ability to communicate. So if a project like that does come through, please add your support to it.
Thank you. Does the plan take into consideration that on any given day in summer and winter holiday periods, the population of this area swells tremendously in terms of visitors, employees, vehicles, parking along roads, and pedestrians?
I think we've already answered that.
The new developments in Crystal Bay will add around 2,000 people in the 1 mile stretch between Waldorf and the Kings Beach Center, Calneva being the development in between. What is being done to address the traffic congestion and would occur at that critical point on one of our 3 city corridors?
Thank you. I'm Eric Cook with Washington County's Community Services Department. So I think it's really important to first understand that this particular project has a whole host of reviewers. There's 17 reviewing agencies, including North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District and NDOT. I went through some of the conditions just to kind of highlight some of those that are related to traffic concerns. So as part of the project, there's some road realignments that are being proposed. Specifically, there's some abandonments of existing roads and a new proposed road through there. As part of the project, those abandonments will not go into place until the new road is constructed and offered for dedication to Washoe County. So the new road will be in place before the old roads are gone. This new road is actually being conditioned to be a minimum of 20 foot wide. It's required to be heated for snow melt. And it will, provide public access, both ingress and egress. There'll be no construction parking within Washoe County roadways adjacent to the project. No storage of construction materials or stockpiles will be allowed on county roadways. And no interruption of the emergency communications infrastructure will be allowed during the construction of the project. Obviously, a traffic impact analysis is being required. And then there's some improvements that are already being proposed as part of the project. And those include sidewalks and bicycle lanes, the widening sections of SR 28 along with the left turn pocket. And then again, as I mentioned, heated access road for snow removal on the main access road through that development. So if you have any other questions related to that are outside of kind of traffic, you can always email development@washoecounty.gov and development@washoecounty.gov, and they have a lot of information. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Pastor, did you want to add to that? Okay. All right, cool.
So, all right, this is a little bit lengthy. I'll go fast. The draft of the county's evacuation plan listed the Washoe Tahoe population at 88,669 people, basically the 2010 census number for Incline alone. It did not include Crystal Bay occupants of second homes, STRs, commute workers, and tourists. I put a good amount of time developing such a model, which I would happily turn over to you as a better start than 8,669, period. Sorry.
Reading the survey.
By my estimate, the population to be evacuated would be around 21,000, 17,800 in Washoe Tahoe, plus some portion of Kings Beach, as Washoe Tahoe shares escape routes with them. Dividing population by egress lanes and comparing to Paradise, California, where 85 people lost their lives in a fast-moving fire, I estimate our risk to be almost twice as high. Aside from infrastructure preparation, emergency personnel, communication, education, and fuel rejection, what is being done to address the scary high ratio of population to roads?
So I think I talked about this a little bit earlier in that we're working with NDOT to review flow and choke points. We're working with IVGAD to review those numbers ourselves, and then to compare the numbers given to us and the numbers that we identify ourselves.
Did you all want to add to that at all? No? No? Okay.
No, I do.
Oh.
In the lengthy statement that Tia read above, stating that 80, we've got man, 85 people perished in the Paradise, and that their opinion would be that would be twice as high for us. We need to compare apples to apples. Paradise's topography and fuels and weather is not the same as the Tahoe Basin. So the fast-moving fire in California is not necessarily the exact same scenario that's going to happen in the Tahoe Basin. So I want to keep that in mind. I know a lot of people don't like that answer. I've offered to talk to people about that. They would like to talk to that about that. Please and come see me. What I'm finding though is that people are parent shopping. When I tell them that, they go ask somebody else to hear the answer they want to hear about this. Please come talk to me about it, and I'll be more than happy to sit down with anybody and we can go over that.
Thank you, Chief. All right, next one. How has the county factored in tourism and visitor numbers into the estimated population to evacuate from the North Tahoe Basin? We just answered that. Unless anybody. Has the county factored into the number of persons to be evacuated the through traffic of visitors on summer weekends? NDOT data indicates at least 10,000 vehicles going north on Canyon State Route 28 monitoring station and 10,000 vehicles going south on weekend days in July. Kind of answered that already.
Yep.
Why has the county not done a roadway by roadway database assessment of capacity to evacuate vehicles from the North Tahoe Basin? Is such an assessment plan?
Already answered that.
Kind of already answered that. What are the hardened buildings in Incline Village, Crystal Bay, where visitors and residents need shelter if the roads are blocked? What is the capacity of each of these identified buildings? What is the evidence that then would provide sufficient shelter?
So Ryan, that's me. Ryan, someone's going to answer this one for those of you online. Hardened buildings within Incline and Crystal Bay. They do exist, but each one of them has issues, and we're addressing those issues right now. Kind of along the lines that you heard earlier from Kelly is that we don't want to exactly identify those buildings, because if that's the only thing you hear tonight and you run there during an evacuation scenario, that may be in the heart of the danger, and we don't want to do that. So this is a work in progress. We know that this is absolutely an issue, and I know Fire Marshal John James is on this as well. And again, we're in the middle of revamping the 2024 Wildland Urban Interface building codes with Washoe County. And a lot of these ideas that have come forth from the public in these questions are going to be addressed and hopefully adopted into these codes in one fashion or another.
All right, next one. Has the daily visitors to Sand Harbor been included in the number of persons and vehicles to evacuate? Again, we answered that one. What are the plans? I just am reading them out of, because we said that we would. So what are the plans for coordinating the King's Speech on evacuation via State Route 28? What will be the impact of the new developments planned for Crystal Bay and King's Speech on basic evacuation routes? How does the roundabout development in recent years impact emergency traffic flows?
Huh? Yeah. Oh, I thought you said, do I want you to answer a little bit of that? Yes, I do.
Come on up.
Thank you. Yeah, Lieutenant Tacon with the Sheriff's Office. And again, that's where, obviously if an incident's occurring where the evacuation route is going into our county, that's obviously we'll have that liaison, that communication with the Unified Command, knowing that flow of traffic is coming, and that we're going to do our processes of having California Highway Patrol and other resources there to basically work on arterial routes, roadblocks, and directed traffic. And I know that Bob, during July, they have a very success rate with roundabouts getting a lot of traffic out, right, Bob? So roundabouts actually work very well when you actually have that control of traffic. And one thing people talk about too is with, when we do go to that evacuation, you guys aren't following vehicle codes. You're not stopping at stop signs. You're not stopping at intersections. We're pushing you through for constant flow of traffic.
I think another really good point to that is that, we have these relationships, even though we're across the state line. Placer County can still come here. I still go there. We work with Robert Momack from the town of Truckee pretty regularly. I think you were at my building today, Robert. And here we are again. And we work with the state of Nevada and Cal OES as well to, formulate those relationships ahead of time so that we have communication at every level. So, first responders are talking in the field, emergency managers are talking across state lines, and state emergency managers are talking across state lines. California and Nevada have come together. They're working on a mass care and evacuation plan between the two states at that level. But, we've really focused on in the past couple of years improving that communication, ensuring that partners on both sides of the lines know how things work. And so we can work together seamlessly across that imaginary line, if you will.
Thank you. What is the estimated total visitors resident population of Waldorf, Calneva, 947 Tahoe, and Kings Beach condos? What is it to ensure how roads can accommodate additional population?
Thank you. I talked earlier about, like any development, there are several conditions that have been placed on this development to mitigate as much can be the impacts of that development. So although I don't know the numbers, I can kind of tell you the scope of the project. They're proposing 7 buildings, of which 14 two-bedroom units for employee housing. They have 25 exclusive condos and 36 condo rentals, and then 76 hotel rooms. So it's not massive in size. And again, conditions are set in place based on the impacts to mitigate those impacts.
What does modeling suggest for the speed of fire spread in North Tahoe Basin?
So that's a very complex scenario to run. It needs to be more specific of the area, the conditions, the fuels, weather. There's not a true black and white answer for this. And also which direction, obviously the fire is going. So this is a very, very complex question, and I can get with the person that asked it and try to explain it better. But we do have computer models that we can take current observations of the weather and all of the state I just stated, put it into a computer, and it's going to tell us where it's going to go and how fast and how intense. However, with the fuels work that I talked about earlier, running what we call behave, it's called behave. A behave run within Incline and Crystal Bay with our fuels work, the flame lengths are going to be 4 feet or less, which gives us the ability to get in there and fight that fire.
Thank you, Chief. What entities are responsible for making the call on when and what areas are to be evacuated? Is there any scope for a policy of preemptive evacuation and/or closing the basin to tourist visitor traffic should fire spread? Corrected.
So the entity responsible for making the call on evacuations is North Lake Tahoe Fire, and we will do so if the situation warrants it. Any scope for a policy of preemptive evacuation? Not necessarily, because fires are so dynamic. But what I can say is you did see an example of this during the Caldor fire. When it was coming into the basin, Nevada was very proactive once we found out, obviously, that evacuees were coming this way and so on and so forth, that 431, Kingsbury, and Spooner were closed to through traffic. So we do take that and we do close the basin down to tourism when the time of need.
Thank you. Why did the consultants in the 2022 county evacuation plan suggest Incline Village, Crystal Bay evacuees seek shelter internally?
So again, this is kind of complex, but if there's a large scale evacuation, one of the things that we plan for is if the inn is full, so to speak, if we're in the middle of hot August nights and there's not an empty hotel room in all of Reno and the convention center is packed in all of the halls and we're unable to shelter in Reno, region for whatever reason, that we have another location identified and we're able to work with our partners in that area. Obviously, we want to keep people as close to home as they can be. We try to keep them as close to, what they know, their resources, their support systems as we can. But sometimes situations just don't dictate for that. And we saw that also in Caldor Fire, where initially people went to Douglas County, to Carson, and then ended up, everyone was in Reno. It's not the closest location, but it was the biggest and the most able to accommodate everyone. So those types of scenarios we also have to plan for. Another thing in our plan that we look at is mass migration. And so, if a large area of California is being evacuated for whatever reason and they have to come through our area, how are we going to support those individuals with resources potentially on their way to Fernley? And who are we going to work with? How are we going to support that operation?
Thank you. Provide rationale for the 2022 evacuation study assumptions on number of persons about 8,500 and vehicles about 3,700 to be evacuated. What was the basis for assuming this could be done within several hours?
So I don't think we didn't do a study per se. I think you mean the plan update that we did in 2020. And as I've mentioned a bunch of times, we only updated a part of that plan, and that was to do with non-congregate housing related to mass care. So those numbers were not updated in that portion of the plan. However, we are looking at them now.
Thank you. If a phased evacuation by area proposed, how will the sheriff department enforce this? Will neighborhoods not prioritize have their access ways out blocked? If not, then how do the basin roads not be blocked?
It's law enforcement priority to make sure that all evacuation areas are done, and we utilize search and rescue and whatever entities we have available to do that at the time. We do not and will not see any circumstance where we would block or close an access way out to a neighborhood. That's not going to happen. Our goal is to get everyone out. So there will be no access roads blocked. The only blocked roads will be those that are identified as leading into an actual danger zone. So that question is it's never going to become an issue. Those roads will be open. We're not going to ever block someone into their respective neighborhoods. And additionally, as John had stated earlier, that 28, 431, those will be blocked in the areas he designated earlier. And that's where they'll be blocked, just to make sure no other vehicles besides first responders, emergency vehicles, and assets are coming in. Everything will be open to get everyone out of the area. So just to make sure that there shouldn't be any roads blocked other than the ones designated to threat areas. Is there anything else I left out on this side, Josh?
All right, thank you. How many residents in Incline Village, Crystal Bay have more than one car? Has the data been factored into the assessment of number of vehicles that may seek evacuation?
I think we answered that already.
How many fire breaks are planned in advance of a fire between Crystal Bay and Truckee to parallel 267?
So obviously I had a fields map up earlier that shows what we call our halo around Incline and Crystal Bay. I can tell you that working with basin fire chiefs right now, we are working on shaded fuel breaks to protect communities around the entire basin. Is anybody here from the Forest Service? Okay, good. We are running into some serious red tape going onto their land and putting in shaded fuel breaks, but we are making progress. It's just a very slow process. They started in Douglas County a little bit as a kind of an expo or to show the capabilities of this, and actually the Forest Service really liked it. So we are gaining ground there. Now, specifically between 2 points, not necessarily are we doing that. What we're doing is these breaks around the communities to protect the communities and a fire coming off of the Forest Service land.
Will such fire breaks go all the way to Glenshire? If not, how do you expect people to evacuate both Incline, Crystal Bay, and Kings Beach?
They're not going all the way to Glenshire. I do want to tag on to that, though. We are working with NDOT, and I know California is working with Caltrans to improve the right-of-ways, if you will, on either side of the highways too. So that could be considered a fuel break, so that the highways remain open and aren't impaired by fire. Much like they were for the Caldor, Highway 50 and Highway 88 were absolutely impaired by fire. And so we from the Nevada went and helped them, and were able to make our way into South Lake and help them out.
Yeah, a question to the Highway 50, since you brought it up from Douglas County. I was involved in the Calder fire, and I know how long it took using unidirectional flow out of the basin. And I would like to have your opinion about the plans of NDOT to obstruct and congest Highway 50 by making a road node, which means they take 2 lanes away, put K-trails out of concrete on the side, and provide this. Thank you.
So I'm very well aware of the situation. Tonight, we're going to concentrate on Incline and Crystal Bay. I'd love to talk to you afterwards for Highway 50, but the fire chiefs are actively in negotiations, I should say. We're talking to NDOT and telling them that that's not a great idea, and they are starting to listen.
Thank you. Will there be any additional fire breaks?
It's kind of the same thing. It's another question of 2 points between communities. Any additional fire breaks between Crystal Bay and Mount Rose? Chief Moore, we can get together and talk about fire breaks if you'd like. But again, it's the same concept. It's around the communities and not from one point to another between communities.
All right, great. Given that the drill headquartered at the Crystal Bay Club several years ago showed fire starting in Kings Beach would reach 431 in 2 hours, how do you plan to evacuate the entire village along 431?
That 2-hour time frame was excelled for the drill only. We wanted to get through the process in a timely fashion because we work 8 to 5 and we want to get through that. Wildland fire is going to take multiple days, okay? And the threat's going to be there multiple days. 2 hours from Kings Beach to 431 is very unrealistic. We excelled that to get through the process so that we could learn more specifically about our bi-state communication plan, evacuation plan between the 2 counties. And that was a big, big ordeal, but we had to excel that for drill purposes only.
Thank you, Chief Summers. That model did not consider the growth that has and will take place that we now know about, nor did it consider the increase in tourists. Please tell me how this will work.
I think I've already addressed that.
How many fire breaks will be well, I've already answered this. I'll read it anyway. How many fire breaks will be created in advance of a fire along State Route 28 between Incline and US Route 50? Will these fire breaks go all the way to Carson, Reno, or Washoe Valley? I've already addressed that. By what date do you anticipate having fire breaks in place to fully protect the residents of Incline Village and all the additional people who are now coming to and through this village?
We have a halo around the lake now. We're revisiting it. This is our 2nd or 3rd time for what we call re-entry. So I believe that exists around the community. And if I can just back up for just 1 second, a shaded fuel break is going to be something that's more appealing to the folks that live within the communities versus a full-on fire break, which now you've got, a freeway in the middle of the forest. That is not the fuels break we are going to put in. We're going to put in more of a the lower fuels, ladder fuels are going to be the ones removed. And that's a shaded fuel break. So it's still appealing for the Tahoe Basin, and it's not some ugly scar like a gas line or a power line scenario. That's not what we're talking about when I say shaded fuel break. So I want to make sure everybody understands a shaded fuel break versus a full fire break, which we will not exercise. Plus the Forest Service will murder me.
All right, so last question. Wanted to discuss communications infrastructure.
I believe we did that.
So that is all our submitted questions. It's 7:14. Thank you everyone very much. Is there anything that you guys would like to add to wrap things up?
I just would like to say I appreciate the community coming together and asking us to put this forum on. We heard you. Hopefully you were able to take some good points away from this. You feel better informed and better supported. Again, please use the resources we have available to you. There's code red information in the back and personal preparedness plans back there. If you'd like more information about that, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Like I said, Red Cross is a great resource for personal preparedness as well. But I think that was it for me.
That's it. Yeah, thank you all. Oh, good. One in the back.
Yeah, I want to make sure really quick though that we do thank Tia. She's the one that actually put this entire thing together. And did all the others. So thank you, Tia.
Great, thank you. I think so we didn't have time for questions, but we can talk offline afterwards. We want to be respectful of everybody's time.
We have a lot of elderly people, so there's usually I have on my screen. And I tried to find a visitor and the Red app and all of that. What do we do? What do we recommend to those organizations who don't have cell phone or if they do get a cell phone, they're not going to be able to operate it?
Right. So, if they're in their 80s, they're familiar with landlines. That's always an option. Again, radios are an option. TV, the information will come through in all of the ways that I described earlier. And those are the options available to us via technology.
Landline paper, landline.
Yes, if they're able to have a landline, then that is a suggestion, yes. If they are able to have a landline, then yes, that is a suggestion, but also radio and television are other ways that the communication will come through.
You had mentioned breaking out the evacuation from the other items in the plan. Does that mean that if we have questions for evacuation, it then goes to the fire and police?
No, it'll still come to me. Yes.
And then-
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Drive safe and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you all.